How about that, you poor thing? I've gotten rid of the smell of poverty for you, so you should be grateful." With those words, champagne was thrown in my face with force. This happened when I went to meet my fiancé's family. Instead of being concerned for me, James, my fiancé, started laughing loudly as if he was making fun of me. I quickly realized that all the effort I put into styling my hair and choosing my clothes was wasted. In the end, all I felt was emptiness. That's why I decided to end our contract with your company. When they heard my decision, Lauren, James's mother, who threw the champagne, and James himself were both shocked. They didn't seem to understand what was happening. Suddenly, James's father, President Walker, appeared. "Mr. Walker, you mentioned before that you plan to retire soon and pass your responsibilities to your son. In this situation, it's fair to reconsider how much my company can trust a future business leader. There might have been an intention to keep our relationship through your son marrying me, but unfortunately, it has backfired." After explaining everything, I quietly left. Lauren, who overheard my conversation with President Walker, was too upset to say anything. But this isn't the end. They will have to face the consequences of their actions. My name is Mariah Carey. I'm 50 years old and have never been married. I've always focused on my work and enjoyed my alone time. With hobbies like reading and watching movies, I've had fulfilling days. Because of this, I never developed an interest in marriage as I got older. But that spring in March, when the flowers were blooming, I received an unexpected marriage proposal. The person who introduced me was Kyle Walker, with whom I had a business relationship. "Miss Carey, I'd like to introduce you to someone. What do you think?" he said. Although I was hesitant at first, I decided to meet the person after being strongly encouraged. That person was James, who was the same age as me and the son of President Walker. He's the youngest son with several older sisters. He's come close to marriage a few times before, but has remained single. I had one request before our first meeting, but James was a polite and kind person, and I immediately liked him. I started thinking that maybe marrying him wouldn't be such a bad idea, so I suggested that we start dating. Both President Walker and James were happy with this idea, and everything seemed to be going well. But I never imagined that this decision would lead to an unexpected situation later on. 2 weeks into our relationship, during our third date, James smiled and said, "We're already like a couple, aren't we?" Unlike before, James was wearing a casual jacket and looked relaxed and youthful. I had also switched from dressing up to wearing casual pants. Even though we were both older, our feelings at that moment felt as fresh as those of young people. However, as the date went on, I started noticing something strange about James's behavior. He often made comments that felt a bit insulting. For example, he took me to a slightly upscale restaurant and proudly said, "You don't usually get to come to a place like this, right? This must be special for you." I could only respond with a vague smile. In reality, this restaurant was one of my favorites, and I had just visited it with a friend 6 days ago. But I didn't want to embarrass him, so I didn't tell him the truth. A waiter I knew noticed my signal and played along, pretending not to recognize me. While we were sitting, I noticed the watch on James's wrist. It wasn't the best watch out there, but it was nice. I complimented him, saying, "That's a different watch from before. The color is lovely, and it suits you." Embarrassed, James took off the watch to show it to me, thinking I was really interested. Since I wasn't that interested in men's watches, I just looked at it briefly and gave it back. But he seemed to insist on giving it to me again, saying, "Feel free to take a closer look. It's not every day you see something this fancy, right? Don't be shy." My reaction wasn't just out of politeness, I simply wasn't that interested in the watch. Though I agreed to take a closer look when he insisted, I felt a bit confused. To me, a watch is just an accessory, and I think checking the time on a smartphone is enough. I had mentioned his watch casually, just like I might compliment a friend's new decorative item. Many of the older people I work with wear similar watches, so I actually see them quite often. Thank you for showing it to me, I said. It's nice to have something you like. James then slightly pouted and subtly started looking at my belongings. What caught his attention was a bag that I'm really fond of. This bag was specially made for me at a workshop I love, reflecting the craftsman's skill and my personal taste. It's very practical and a bit expensive, but to James it seemed cheap. He asked, "Don't you have a proper bag? I think you should have something more prestigious." The bag was custom-made at a German workshop and doesn't have a brand logo. In fact, the craftsman's logo is hidden at the bottom of the bag because I prefer simple designs. It's hard for someone who doesn't know much about women's bags to guess its value just by looking at it. But I couldn't help feeling puzzled by his constant superior attitude. Sometimes I brush it off, thinking he's just a sheltered person who doesn't know much about the world, but the uncomfortable feeling doesn't easily go away. At one point, I thought about reconsidering the idea of marriage, but since we had only met 2 times, it seemed too soon to decide on breaking up. So I decided to wait and see how things would go. Since then, we've continued dating. James does show some immaturity at times, but he's basically an honest person. He no longer acts in that unnatural way he did before. No one is perfect from the start. If you have patience and gradually find harmony, love will eventually grow. I heard an older female celebrity say this on a show I watched, and I found some truth in her words. The following week, we went to a famous hotel buffet for our 5th date. Strangely, James piled 4 or 6 servings of food onto his plate. I lightly commented, "Are you sure it's okay to take so much? It would be a waste if you can't finish it." He suddenly burst into laughter. Wondering what was so funny, he said, "A waste, Mariah? Are you still talking like someone poor? It's okay to take this much. It doesn't matter if I throw it away if I can't eat it all." I made a sour face. It seemed he completely missed the point that wasting food not only costs money, but also inconveniences other customers. The issue isn't just about money. It's about resources and the environment. Aren't you aware of the concept of food waste? It's also inconsiderate to other customers, and eating like that isn't good, I said, my voice more stern than usual. James suddenly shrank back, poking at his pasta with a fork, and muttered, "I'm sorry, please don't be mad. My mom said you might be marrying me for money, and I just reacted without thinking." The word mommy stuck in my mind, and I accidentally repeated it. Referring to one's mother as mommy at his age was unusual and hinted at something odd about his family. As the date was ending, with this uncomfortable feeling in my mind, James drove me home. When I was about to get out of the car, he grabbed my hand and said, "Miss Carey, even though I am who I am, would you marry me? Even if not right away, being engaged is fine. I can wait as long as it takes." I was surprised by James's sudden boldness, but soon I began to feel genuine happiness from his actions. Despite the concerns I had about James, his way of asking made me feel joyful. I thought that maybe the things he lacked could be improved after marriage, and I could help guide him into becoming a loving husband. 5 months had passed since we first met, and I felt it was the right time to move forward. Let's grow together by supporting each other. We both have flaws and differences, so let's talk a lot and work them out, I said with teary eyes, moved by emotion. However, the moment I agreed to the proposal, James showed troubling behavior again. He said with a smile, "Let's start preparing for married life. First, you should quit your job, take care of the home, and learn housework from my mom." My joy vanished, replaced by rising anger. I responded more strongly than usual. "Don't be so presumptuous. If that's your attitude, then marriage is out of the question. Goodbye." James was silent, stunned. In that moment, I got out of the car and went straight into my house. Even though I decided to distance myself, I reluctantly agreed to meet James after he sent me a message over the weekend, insisting on seeing me. The weekend came quickly, and when the day arrived, James was already waiting at our meeting spot. As I approached, James stood up quickly and apologized deeply. "I'm really sorry about last time. My friends told me to be firm, and I took it too seriously. They even scolded me for thinking it was okay to act like that," James said, his energy low, which started to melt away my anger. Not long ago, I felt like getting upset with him, but I eventually made peace with it. It's a bit disappointing, but James is dear to me. He's very straightforward, and sometimes it's hard for him to tell the difference between a joke and something serious. He's easily influenced and a bit indecisive, but I reminded myself that no one is perfect from the start. Make sure you keep this in mind. "We're getting engaged, after all," I said with a small smile. Hearing this, James looked up suddenly and brightened right away. After a month of a somewhat turbulent engagement period, it was finally time to meet each other's families and announce our marriage. The first visit was to James's family home. Although I had known President Walker for a long time, it was strictly professional, and this was my first time visiting his home, which made me nervous. James was his usual gentle and lovely self, but he seemed a bit off that morning. I thought maybe he was just nervous, but that wasn't the case. About my mom," he started, and I braced myself, thinking about the usual worries between a daughter-in-law and mother-in-law. But I trusted his mother, known to be a hard-working woman and the kind-hearted wife of President Walker. I hoped that if I spoke sincerely, she would understand me, but I was wrong. The moment I stepped into the room to greet them, liquid splashed onto my face. My eyes started to sting badly, and a strong irritation hit my nose, making me cough violently. I immediately panicked. "How about that, you poor thing? I got rid of the poor smell for you, so be thankful," I heard a mocking voice say. I was shocked by the bitter taste, smell, and heat. I realized the liquid in my mouth was champagne, but I couldn't understand why I was being treated like this. "Lauren, what are you doing?" President Walker exclaimed in shock. The situation became clear. James's mother, Lauren, who was supposed to be my future mother-in-law, had thrown champagne in my face. It seemed the mocking voice was also Lauren's. I remembered how James had looked down on me as poor before and realized that this attitude might have come from Lauren. "What's the matter, Mariah? You're all wet. Funny, isn't it?" "Go, Mommy, that's just like you." James laughed loudly. At that moment, I realized that everything I had done up to this point was for nothing. I felt nothing but emptiness in my heart. "I will therefore terminate our contract with your company," I said. "What?" James and Lauren both exclaimed in surprise. They quickly looked at each other and seemed to whisper about something, maybe our business dealings or something else. But as far as I was concerned, I was no longer involved. I was just an outsider. I could only guess what they were discussing at that moment. One person who stayed silent was President Walker, who looked pale and wide-eyed. I turned to him, thanked him, and began to speak. "First of all, President Walker, I want to thank you for your cooperation so far. It must be because of the condition we agreed on that nothing like this has happened before." When I turned to speak to Lauren and James, Lauren looked at President Walker with a doubtful expression and then stared at me sternly. Meanwhile, James watched Lauren's reaction while glancing at me. I continued quietly, knowing that what I was about to say might surprise them, but I hoped they would listen carefully. One condition of accepting this matchmaking was that I would not reveal I am the president of a company until the marriage was decided. I didn't want my title to interfere. My connection with President Walker came from significant business transactions I built over the years while focusing on my work. I took out my business card, which naturally listed my company name and position. Even those not involved in management would understand the importance of my title. "Hello again, Mrs. Lauren. Thank you for all your help so far. This is my position. I've been working with your husband's company for over 12 years, and right now, my company is probably your biggest client. I wonder what percentage of your company's sales we represent." When I handed over my business card, James turned pale with surprise. He worked in his father's company, so seeing my company name should have made it clear who I was. To President Walker, I was not just any business owner, I was the owner of one of his most important business partners. That's why I wanted my profession hidden at first, to truly see James's character when choosing a lifelong partner. I wanted to see the real person, not just a superficial act. I couldn't risk a fake attitude because it could affect the future of a parent's company. So I was introduced as just someone who met James through work. I even wore fake glasses and changed my makeup and hairstyle for our dates. Looking back, the disguise was just a temporary amusement and, in the end, a waste of time. I'm sorry, President Walker, but I have to decline this proposal. This isn't just about marriage. We also need to pause our transactions to reassess the situation, I said, then sat down to face President Walker. Afterward, I calmly explained the situation. President Walker turned even paler when he heard my words and stuttered. The transactions are affected? That can't be right. But his reaction seemed forced. I shook my head firmly, showing that my decision was final. But I wanted him to understand that my decision was not based on a fleeting emotion. I continued speaking calmly. President Walker, you mentioned before that you plan to retire soon and hand over your responsibilities to your son. In this situation, it's important to reconsider how reliable a future business partner can be. It seems there was an intention to keep our business relationship strong by having your son marry me. But unfortunately, that plan has backfired. Right after graduating from university, I started my own company with some friends. Over 22 years have passed since then, and I've been leading the business as its president the entire time. As I've mentioned several times, I've built a strong relationship with President Walker's company for more than a decade. My company, managed with a female perspective, has been recognized for its unique approach and has grown significantly recently. As a result, our business with President Walker's company has also increased. However, there have been internal discussions lately about whether we should switch to new business partners. Amidst this situation, the sudden proposal of an arranged marriage came up. Considering the timing, President Walker might have sensed some changes happening in our company. This wasn't exactly a secret. After realizing who I was, Lauren and James were clearly disturbed. I decided to explain further. In fact, we were reviewing whether to continue our business with your company. I've heard that your company is currently facing some management difficulties. Are you aware of that? Since contracts with other partners are ending, this information is crucial. Lauren, shocked, asked, "What does that mean?" while frantically shaking President Walker's arm. President Walker wiped his sweat. Looking anxious, it seemed that the company's issues hadn't been discussed within the family. James's confused glances between me and President Walker caught my attention. Despite being an insider, James seemed unaware of his own company's current situation. While thinking about this puzzling situation, I continued, "Given this, President Walker strongly suggested that I meet with you, James, leading us to this point. Perhaps you considered this marriage proposal to stabilize your company. It seems you wanted to maintain our business relationship at all costs." Lauren was visibly shaken, her hands trembling, and her lips quivering as she listened. I explained that President Walker's company is indeed struggling with management issues. Lauren may have looked down on me earlier, but her company is dealing with much bigger problems. Once known for quality and speed, President Walker's products have been overtaken by competitors' technology and no longer stand out. Additionally, the development and manufacturing processes are inefficient, cost reduction efforts have failed, and the products have become too expensive. Moreover, the company places too much pressure on employees by modern labor standards, leading to shorter delivery times and further damaging the company's reputation. Working with a low-rated company like this can harm the reputation of its business partners as well. Even a company with a long history can struggle when it has outdated structures and a high turnover rate among young employees. As a result, President Walker's company's market share has been decreasing, and its performance continues to decline. In this situation, it was natural for us to look into working with other, more stable companies. Lauren, outraged, shouted, "How dare you threaten to cut off business based on personal feelings? What a despicable act! Are you blackmailing us? This is the worst. Don't think such behavior is acceptable." She seemed to forget that her actions were the cause of this situation. I was surprised by her accusations and the fact that she hadn't even apologized. Before I could say anything, President Walker shouted angrily, "Silence. This is all your fault." I held back what I was about to say. Indeed, President Walker, not me, was likely the most affected by this situation. The unexpected fallout from his wife's inappropriate behavior was probably a shock to him, especially since he had hoped for stability. This all happened because President Walker tried to stick to our agreement, but in reality, keeping it a secret from James alone would have been enough. He should have informed his wife beforehand. As a result, I'm relieved that I didn't have to welcome such a problematic person as my mother-in-law. James' appearance was pitiful. He was pale and trembling, holding tightly onto Lauren's hand. It was sad to see a 50-year-old man still needing his mother's hand. Seeing him like this, I couldn't help but give him a cold look. "It's impossible that someone carrying such a cheap-looking bag could be a president," James accused me harshly. "And you complained about food waste and acted like you were poor. You're lying about being my father's business partner. How disgraceful!" He seemed to be trying to blame me, but he was clearly mistaken. "I'm not interested in branded goods. I prefer high-quality leather products made locally. Also, my criticism of wasting a large amount of food wasn't because I'm poor, but simply because it's inappropriate behavior. There's nothing fake about that. As for this bag, it's custom-made from a workshop I visit often. Anyone who knows about leather would recognize its quality immediately, but it seems none of you care about that. This bag is actually priced higher than many commercial brands." When I explained this, Lauren suddenly stared at my shoes and bag with surprise, then quickly looked away, clearly embarrassed. It's obvious that only those who know about quality would understand. I continued, "Moreover, ordering a lot of food and not finishing it is not only wasteful but also disrespectful to the restaurant. It's unreasonable and inappropriate behavior. And yes, it's true that I'm your father's business partner." What would it mean if the presidents of companies doing business together didn't know each other? James seemed unhappy and unconvinced by what I said. President Walker frowned at his son's behavior when we confirmed that we knew each other. James looked down without saying a word, clinging to Lauren in a way that seemed very childish for his age. Seeing his immaturity, I couldn't help but feel disappointed. "If your company loses our business, we'll be on the brink of bankruptcy. Please forgive us." President Walker began to apologize profusely. His clear statement seemed to finally make Lauren understand the seriousness of the situation. Realizing the impact of his actions, James turned pale and started trembling, saying, "Mommy," with tears in his eyes, clinging to Lauren. But Lauren couldn't respond. Watching this scene, I let out a deep sigh of relief. I deeply regretted ever thinking about sharing my life with someone like James. I had thought that because he was honest, I could help him improve and make things better, but now that seems like a naive thought. I'm so sorry. President Walker kept apologizing over and over without actually offering any solutions or ways to address the situation. This could easily lead to us cutting ties on an emotional level. Therefore, I had to make specific comments about the engagement. "Let's talk about our engagement. I cannot consider marrying someone whose mother behaves so rudely. Moreover, he didn't even try to stop his mother and instead laughed along with her. I hope you understand why the engagement should be called off." President Walker listened, nodding in agreement. I continued, "Thank you for understanding. Until yesterday, I believed in James's potential to improve, so I moved forward with the engagement. But now I feel relieved that our relationship has ended." I gave specific examples of James's behavior, like how he often quoted his mother's opinions, saying, "Mommy said so," and how he still called her Mommy, even though he's almost 52 years old. He frequently used his mother's opinions as an excuse to justify his improper behavior. However, as soon as I'd pointed out these issues, he would quickly become discouraged, showing his weakness. There were countless examples of this behavior. President Walker was shocked, his mouth open in disbelief, and Lauren looked embarrassed. However, James didn't seem to understand what was wrong with his actions. When I asked if there was any fault on my part in calling off the engagement, President Walker shook his head slightly, looking pitiful. I paused to calm myself and took a deep breath. I will divorce my wife. James will also have to move out with her. The company's operations will be taken over by competent staff, so please don't abandon us. Help us, President Walker suddenly declared, clearly anxious after seeing me take a deep breath. What? That's not possible. I can't manage my life without this marriage. Lauren cried out in shock. After that, both James and Lauren raised their voices at President Walker, saying, "Why didn't you tell us beforehand? I'm innocent. Why am I being kicked out? The problem is only with Mommy. I'm not involved." Their protests filled the room, and I finally let out a real sigh, fed up with everything. "Well, as you wish. Thank you for your time. I will take my leave now," I said to President Walker and quickly left. I needed to go home and take my high-quality clothes to the dry cleaners right away. Otherwise, the champagne stains would set and ruin them. James stopped protesting and wept, seemingly accepting the situation. Lauren tried to argue, but President Walker silenced her with a stern reprimand. However, she still seemed to grit her teeth in dissatisfaction, looking more determined than her son. 6 months after the unpleasant incident with the Walker family, as predicted, President Walker resigned from his position. It wasn't just a retirement. It was a resignation, taking responsibility for the company's poor performance. The main reason for the decline was the termination of the contract with my company. A former employee who took over as the new president conducted a full review of the operations. Moving away from family management was well received, and external evaluations of the company improved. He took the initiative to develop new products, and the results were starting to show. At this pace, resuming the paused business transactions might happen soon. In the meantime, President Walker and Lauren officially divorced. As expected, James moved out with Lauren, and they started a new life together. However, rumors say they have daily conflicts. It seems that their close relationship was mostly based on financial comfort. After being forced out of his father's company, James quickly became unemployed. Unable to handle James's financial dependence, Lauren left him in President Walker's care and disappeared. I've heard she now lives alone in an old, low-rent apartment, mourning her situation. Lauren once bragged about her lavish lifestyle, but her behavior pushed many people away. Now, she has no helpers or friends and has become a lonely figure. About a year after President Walker's retirement, I had a chance encounter with him when I visited his former company. I ran into him unexpectedly. "I am very sorry for the great inconvenience I caused before," he said. He had generously given half of his property to Lauren, but her financial troubles were mostly due to James's demands and Lauren's continued extravagant spending. Unfortunately, this is personal responsibility, and it's hard to feel sympathy. President Walker had planned to keep James at a distance, but he was shocked to learn that his nearly 52-year-old son didn't even know how to boil water. Eventually, they ended up living together. Now, he is firmly teaching James, making various decisions around the house. James had completely relied on Lauren, and President Walker admitted, "I feel that I didn't properly take care of my son and wife until now." This is the misfortune I created for myself. Although it's late, I am deeply reflecting on my mistakes. I think I also did some wrong things to Lauren. Fortunately, the company didn't go bankrupt, and I am relieved. Now retired and staying at home, President Walker is seriously engaging with James for the first time. James, facing new challenges like household chores and part-time jobs, often cries despite his age. I can only hope that he becomes a better person, but I have no desire to have any more dealings with him ever again. 5 years have passed since then, and my company is doing very well. My performance has improved compared to before, and the stock price has also risen. As for my personal life, I am no longer considering marriage. I have already informed my parents. When I got engaged, I explained everything to my parents, and when the engagement ended, I shared the details with them again. They supported my decision to stay single, rather than being involved with someone like that. As a result, my parents are now even stronger supporters of my focus on work. I stay busy every day and have taken up new hobbies to make my life more fulfilling. Although I used to prefer indoor activities, I recently decided to start exercising at the gym. I can even see my muscles starting to form, and my subordinates look at me with admiration, which feels a bit strange. I've always believed that happiness is something you create for yourself. I look for happiness that I build on my own, not just the kind that comes from being with someone else. If I were to fall in love again, I would prefer it to happen later in life when I could afford to give everything up for love. But that's not something I'm worried about right now. My days are fulfilling, and I'm happy. My life has just begun, and I'm focused on working